Ik du jeep ho lakh hohe lakh hove lakh vis. The next line, Guru says, lakh lakh gera akhiye. Ek naam Jagdish. Lakh lakh. And hundreds of thousands of times. Gera means repetitions, to go round in a circle again and again. Gera. Lakh lakh gera akhiye. So you would then be able to recite it hundreds of thousands of times, again and again. Hundreds of thousands of repetitions uttered. If you had that opportunity to have hundreds of thousands of tongues, and each one was to repeatedly go and recite that one name of the world master, Jagdish. Again, something to look at here is the spelling of lakh. In the first line, we see lakh spelt without an onkar, and in the second line, we see lakh spelt with an onkar. Same word, same meaning, two different spellings. Now, in Punjabi grammar, in Gurmukhi grammar, only nouns are gendered. Only nouns are given a masculine or a feminine gender. So, a noun is just something that has a name. Like we can say a watch, or socks, or shoes, or apple, or tree. These are objects. Only objects are either masculine or feminine. Other words aren't given masculine or feminine characteristics. So, a number is what we would say is a describing word. A number never has any value on its own. It always used to describe something. If I give you the number 7, you'll say, 7 what? 7 has to be joined onto something. So, we have to understand that when we see grammatical differences in adjectives, what it means is that they give us an indication of what they're attached to. Because the adjective itself, like a number itself, can't have a masculine or a feminine. So in the first example, we're seeing lakh, which we would call mukta. It doesn't have a vowel at the end. We call that free, a free word, mukta. And that's because this is an adjective, a describing word, a word that gives a characteristic to an object, and it's linked to jibo, lak jibo. The word jib is feminine, is striling. The word jib is feminine. So because lak is attached to a feminine word, we would see the word as mukta. And in the same way, the second version of lak is linked to gera. And this is a masculine word, so it has an onkar. And so what we're saying in the first example, we're talking about 100,000 tongues, jibho lak hohe, and in the second word we're seeing 100,000 repetitions, lak lak gera. So this is why there's two different spellings. Also the word Jagdish, Jagat da Ishwar, Jagat da Malik. Jagdish, the Ish there means Ishwar, the master, the lord of Jag, the world, the Jagat. And this is a name of God, Jagdish. Normally we would see the name of God to be a masculine singular word. We should again expect to see an onkar at the end of this word. But because it's linked to another word, that's why we don't have it. So here we can start to see how we can start to understand Gurbani. And what is the word that it's linked to? Ek naam Jagdish. So Jagdish, Ek naam Jagdish means Jagdish da ek naam. So here the main noun that we're talking about is naam, We're not talking about God. We're saying God's name. So name becomes the main word that we're talking about. So if we were just talking about Ek Jagdish, one God, then Jagdish would have an onkar, because that's the main noun that we're talking about, the main object that's being referenced. Here, when this isn't the main object being referenced, it has to indicate that somehow. So it shows you that I'm linked to something else. So Jagdish doesn't have the onkar underneath it saying I'm linked to something else. And here we understand Ek Naam Jagdish. In the same way, the word Ek has an onkar because it's connected to a masculine word. So Ek has an onkar because Naam has an onkar. So just within these one or two lines, we see that there's so much grammar that we really start to understand how important it is. If we really want to translate Gurbani accurately, we have to understand the rules with which Gurbani has been written. Lakh lakh geda akhya ek naam Jagdish. And if hundreds of thousands of repetitions uttered the one name of the world's master. So Guruji asks, what if we had 100,000 or even a few million tongues? If each of these tongues was to recite the name hundreds of thousands of times, then would it be enough? At that point, would it be enough for us to become fully realized? What is the destination? That's the question being asked here. Guru then goes on to clarify this path. Et rahe pat pavadiya chadiye hoye 21. Et rahe. Ra means path, rasta. This path, pat pavadiya. Pat comes from pati, the husband. It says that on this path towards the husband, there are pavadiya, paudiyan, there are steps. And chadiye hoye 21. When you climb those steps, you find this thing called 21. And we'll go on to what that means. So what Guru is saying is, yes, Naam is very important. Yes, all the qualities that we've talked about so far are very important. But they're all leading somewhere. They're all going to this final step. Naam is what you need to support you while you're climbing this path, while you're walking on this path. So imagine now Guru is using the example of climbing a mountain, and there are millions of steps towards it. Naam is the thing that supports you all the way. But you're getting somewhere, there is a destination. Naam is the technique to help you reach that peak of that mountain. And what is the peak? What is the final step? The final summit of the mountain is to Hoye 21. 21 means Ik Ishwar. The word Ik and Ish again here are being joined together. Ik Ishwar. Hoye 21. To become one with Ishwar is the final summit of the mountain. So Guru never strays from what he has always said has been the purpose of the path of realization. Hoye 21. To become one with the oneness, with that Ishwar. Everything else is a signpost. Everything else is a stepping stone. Everything else is a way to help you get there. But climbing on the steps, you know you've got there when you've got to the point where you no longer exist as you, the individual, where you, Hoye 21, you become one with that Ishwar. This is what Guru has talked about previously. When you transcend the three stages of Maya and you go into the stage which has been called the Turiya or the Chautha, the fourth state. But Guru uses a very interesting word here. Pat. Guru, for the first time in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, references this oneness as a husband. You often see in translations this word husband-lord. So it's really important for us to look at why has the divine been called a husband. The Guru has often used the metaphor of a relationship between a wife and a husband to represent the relationship between the Sikh and the divine, the Gurmukh and Paramatma. And this is one of those ideas that is more and more starting to get misunderstood by modern feminist thinking, which is trying to look at this idea as being a way of creating a gender discrimination, degrading women, putting women as low and putting the Almighty God as the masculine. We are the females and God is male. Why is God the male? Why should God be the higher of the two? So this is the modern way of applying feminism and the ideas of feminism into an ancient concept. So it's important that we understand that we're not trying to use modern techniques to analyze ancient texts. We have to understand it from their perspective. We have to understand what the old original meaning is. So this is to be understood as a metaphor. This is just an example for the spiritual seeker. Now, historically in Indian culture, the wife was seen as inferior to the husband. This is how the culture was. It was seen that the duty of the wife was to serve a husband who is to be seen as almost a godlike figure. In Indian culture, we have this term, Pati Parmeshwar. Your husband has to be seen as a god, and this is how the wife has to serve. But Guru is not trying to reinforce this cultural prejudice. Guru is simply using the metaphor, using the example that the society sees at that time to help people understand, just as the wife is serving the husband, so we must serve the divine. Guru is not promoting this. Guru is not saying that this is socially acceptable. In fact, the Sikh Gurus actively fought for gender equality, for women's liberation, for women's rights. So we don't need to apply this modern day feminist thinking to almost critique the Guru and saying, why are you using such metaphors? And the reason we know this is because there are other places in Gurbani where Guru has even used the example of human slavery as a metaphor. The slave trade Guru has actually used to describe that just as slaves are being bought and sold in a market, that a slave can just be the possession of a master, in the same way the Guru has said that I am a slave of the divine. There is one line where Guru says, Lala Hat Vihajya Kya Tis Chaturai. I am a slave purchased in a market. What clever tricks do I have? So again, this should not be seen as the Guru accepting this system within the culture of the time. The Guru is simply using that analogy. Another way to think about it is, today it is totally socially acceptable for man to own an animal, to have a pet. We see absolutely nothing wrong with it. Now, if 1,000 years from now humanity decides that this is a barbaric culture, humanity will then judge us for saying, what kind of people have you been that you used to keep animals as your slaves, as your pets, in your own house, locked away, rather than running free in the wilderness? So in the same way that we don't have an issue with owning pets in our house, go back 500, 1,000 years ago, people didn't see these inequality issues. Slavery was normal. Having servants serve you was normal. Having the male more dominant than the female was completely normal. So we shouldn't apply modern thinking to critique ancient traditions. We simply have to understand what they were talking about from the context of their own traditions. But Gurbani has used this idea of a servant and a master quite a lot. The idea of a husband and a wife, the analogy that the Guru uses, actually goes much more than just serving. Gurbani also talks about a Gurmukh is one who has prepared his bed and allows himself to be ravished by the divine, the way a wife allows herself to be enjoyed by the husband, in the pleasure of the bed of the wife. Gurbani talks about this quite a lot. But this is quite a mature concept. And because it's sensitive, we don't really hear people explaining this concept very well. So that's why in all your translations, you only see the wife and the husband analogy being that of serving, the wife serving. But then that's just a servant and a master analogy. The husband and the wife analogy is far deeper than that. But we're not afraid of these concepts because the Guru talks about them openly. So because we're on this path, we have to use all the analogies that the Guru is trying to use to try and explain to us, this is how you need to be on this path. We have to understand this analogy. So we have to reflect on this idea that just as a wife has prepared herself, has prepared her bed to welcome the husband in, have we prepared ourselves to be penetrated in our body, in our mind, and in our identity by the divine? Are we ready? Are we willing to fully submit? If we look at all males in any species, what we see that the nature of the male across the animal kingdom is to wait for the female to be ready before they consummate. It is the female who indicates that she is now in season, and it is then that the male comes to consummate, for them to copulate. In the same way, if the divine has been described as masculine, then it is the husband who is waiting for you to be ready. We always think that we are waiting for God to come. But the analogy here tells us that God is waiting for you to be ready. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji has used for the first time in Gurbani this analogy of the husband, and the wife has to go along this path. The husband is already there. It is the wife that has to make the journey. We have to prepare ourselves. We have to make sure that we are ready for that husband that is waiting for us, to enjoy us, to ravish us. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji here says that there is a path towards the husband, and this path has some steps. We have to climb these steps with the Naam as our support to reach the top, that state of oneness and being merged with this permanent divine being.